Hey, welcome everybody, and thank you for attending today's first RevUp digital event in North America, the first in a series of digital events that will be highlighting industry leaders, best practices, and new technology workflows in design and construction. Just want to do a quick audio check. If someone could help me out by giving me a thumbs up in the chat feed, confirming that you could hear me. Great, thank you. So hello, my name is Pat Lantry, and I support architects, engineers, and builders in the Northeast. And I am joined by Dan Buckner, our BIM and VDC expert in the Southeast. We have 1 hour to spend together with a jam-packed agenda. So let's get started quickly with our case studies from Harkins Builders and Hoar Construction, which will be followed by Dan Buckner providing some additional tips and tricks on sharing building information models with your project team. During the presentation, please go ahead and ask questions as they come up by entering them in the Zoom meeting chat feed. We'll do our best to answer them throughout the presentation and then circle back to these questions with the time remaining at the end. So again, we are very happy and grateful to bring members of the Revizto community together in today's RevUp, as well as any newcomers. You are part of a rapidly growing community now with over 100,000 users on 17,000 active projects across 150 countries on Revizto's integrated collaboration platform. So why is having an integrated collaboration platform, or ICP, important? Both Harkins Builders and Hoar Construction will be telling you from their perspectives. As an industry, we have identified the communication gaps in the traditional BIM process that unfortunately leaves some stakeholders like non-BIM project team members really out of the process, which negatively impacts project delivery. An integrated collaboration platform like Revizto makes BIM more accessible and actionable to all project stakeholders, regardless of their technical skill set, and both in the office and in the field. In the next hour, you'll learn about the benefits these firms have realized in extending BIM to all project team members. Now let me pass it on to Ralph Kreider and Patrick Scarpati at Harkins Builders to share their story. Guys, you ready?
We are ready. So we're going to share and talk about our story today. And I don't think our story with BIM and Revizto is a lot different than a lot of you out there. We have history. We've heard about BIM. We've had a lot of experience in the industry with BIM over the last 10 years or so. But at Harkins, really, we have not used BIM internally for only a few years. So I want to tell that story, talk to you about how we grew our BIM practice from pretty much nothing. So first, let me answer the question, who is Harkins? Well, Harkins, we're all about building community. We are an 80% of our revenue is really multifamily home building. That's anything from affordable to market rate to both new construction and renovations. Anything from like a 10 to 20 unit project to hundreds of units, multi-phase over year projects. We're primarily in the Mid-Atlantic region, the DC. We're headquartered out here, Columbia, Maryland. And we also do have a government and commercial division, but really our bread and butter is that multifamily residential. And as you know, with BIM in that environment, BIM has really just been a buzzword in the multifamily world. Our government projects, we're using it, but that was only 10%, 15% of our volume. And they would always outsource that requirement to one of our other parties, one of our consultants on those design build projects. On the multifamily side, like I said, it's most of our business, but very few of our design teams were using BIM. None of our trade partners, almost none of our trade partners were using BIM. And we just really never thought about it. We did a little bit of research here and there, but really had a lack of knowledge. So, but over the last couple years, we've really been investing in it. We've been starting to really get going with BIM practices. I was brought in, Patrick was brought in, other people. We've developed a new group around BIM and other innovation and other resources to really advance ourselves in there and get some buy-in. So I want to answer a question for everyone. Why is multifamily lacking, maybe compared to something or lagging behind maybe compared to something like our government. And I'll go back to my Penn State experience 10 years ago. We were doing these things and doing some of the basic things that we're doing now at Harkins 10 years ago. The Army Corps of Engineers had these long requirements back then as well. But really, the concept of multifamily is this is a straightforward process. It's kind of a cookie cutter project. One of the things that is like each unit, it's a unit by unit by unit base. Each unit is self-contained. There's a very little MEP coordination, so we don't have the huge benefits and huge amount of changes throughout the construction. A lot of the changes are solved right there in the field. So we also see that clients make incremental improvements throughout the process here. So and typically stay. So we incorporate some of these trends a little bit slower than maybe some of the other hopes, but now we're really pushing it. One thing to think about in the multifamily world too is that our trade partners, while they're not like out of the back of the truck type of people, they're not these national names that you might know out there. They can range from anywhere from a couple $1 million per year in annual revenue to a couple $100,000, but that has a lot of this stuff is little of it's done in-house. They don't have these huge fabrication shops to do it. So they have a lot of third tier, fourth tier contractors that are really done piecemeal and paid for by the amount of stuff that they're inputted. So their buy into the BIM process is maybe lacking. And we're seeing that trend actually changing now as well. So BIM for them is really just an extra expense that we need to add to our contract. So it's all about that profitability and making each project, more so than even project to project, it's every single project, it's its own company in a way. So where did we get to? Why did we start really using BIM at Harkins? It really comes back to our shifting priorities and making sure that we knew. So a couple years ago, we celebrated Harkins' 50th anniversary. And in addition to being able to reflect on that time, it actually gave us the ability to reflect on the last 50 years. It gave us the ability to look ahead for the next 50 years. So what do we actually want to look like? What did we start doing? Start pushing priority of technology and innovation. We wanted to start actually setting the trends for the multifamily world rather than replying to them. We don't really want to get out of our bread and butter of multifamily, but really want to set the standard for what that should look like in the future. And that's the journey we're on now. That moved us to the birth of a project controls department that really has become the center for innovation through our company. It's about, we started with a project engineering stepping up and saying, can't we do our own scheduling in-house, not pay someone outside? And then we moved into myself and other people hired in the group focused on procedures and bringing innovation. So from a couple years ago, going from a group of just 2 or 3 people, we're now 9, 10 people in our group, and we're really focused on advancing our methodology as our organization, bringing consistent projects and just supporting our project teams. That's anything from scheduling to business analytics to safety, quality control, VDC, IT support, and so many more things that we're just starting to scratch the surface of what this group is going to do. And so that's really dives us into what BIM looks like at Harkins. So BIM at Harkins, like I said, it's really got its roots a couple of years ago. And right now we're focused on what I'll call the BIM basics. So coordination and what we call schedule or structured plan review, which is really just a model review. So coordination, 3D coordination, trade coordination through construction, and then structured plan review through design. We're really evaluating how our BIM should be applied project to project, job to job, making sure that we're using it effectively. We also have other things, not the bread and butter of like marketing, 4D modeling, VR, and I'm just touching a few of the things that we're throwing out there right now. I imagine there's out there on the call, there's people that have been using BIM for 4, 10, 15 years maybe, but there's people that are still probably in the same boat as we were a couple years ago, really just struggling to grab a hold, especially if we have some trade partners out there that are really evaluating how they get into this environment. So what do we do with BIM at Harkins? And really, I've done a few presentations before about BIM in my prior life, so to speak, and some thoughts about choosing to adopt BIM, choosing to adopt different technologies, and choosing like a platform like Revizto is knowing that it takes resources, knowing that it takes time. And we made a critical decision to hire and dedicate some staff to building information modeling, and that's really what started this trend moving in a positive direction. One thing I'd say for those companies out there really evaluating what's the ROI on a piece of software, piece of technology related to BIM, VDC, or any of this is you don't know what you don't know. And I've actually, speaking of in the consulting world, when I was doing some BIM consulting, no company that I've talked to had a firm ROI that couldn't be broken down or broken apart and found holes in about 5 or 10 minutes. So yeah, so we know that. So finding and selecting that BIM person is also huge. So there's a couple options there. Is go into your own company, figure out who has that drive, and it's about that drive, or look for someone outside. So let's get into how we selected BIM at Harkins. So going through, before even just a couple years ago, we had BIM platforms, traditional AEC design suite. We've been using it, but they've just been sitting there. And this gets into kind of our core session for today is how do we use BIM for the every person or for non-BIM users? And that's really what drove us to the platform of Revizto, making that choice. We saw, hey, if you open some of the other platforms, they quickly become intimidating. And you almost have to have a whole course, multiple weeks just on that platform itself. So the simplicity of the interface, the consistency of the interface between the mobile use and the field use was a driving factor. I have written here, basically in the traditional BIM environment, you basically have to know how the sausage is made to actually be able to eat the sausage. And that's really off-putting for a lot of non-BIM users. They don't have to look at the set of plans and know all the AutoCAD or all the different CAD features that go into creating those set of plans or the other model. They want to know what the result is, what the outcome of that is, and that's where the model really comes into it. So how do we get BIM and use it for the every person was really a driving factor. And then honestly, the bonus of VR and some of the other things, the pricing model was really helpful as well. Sorry about that background noise there. If you also look at the scalability, the pricing model was very scalable. And I'm going to turn it over to Patrick to get more into that.
Thanks, Ralph. Hey, guys. So kind of just capping off with what Ralph was saying here, as we roll into Revizto at a company where BIM is going to be new, but it's not only new to us internally, it's going to be new to a lot of our trade partners and subcontractors. So it's a really tall task that we have been taking on for the past year now. So you can see here on the first slide, it's set up to be on a project by project basis. So we didn't come in and start it up and say, hey, every project's going to get this. You're going to like it, whether or not. So we roll it out, and we have it on 2 of our multifamily projects right now, fairly large projects. But we also have the opportunity to really get the program into people's hands. So if we're not doing a full-on coordination, we can at least get these design models from engineers and other design teams and start getting that to the hands of our site teams. So we can use it, first and foremost as a model viewer. The interface of Revizto, I think, is very friendly. There's really nothing different from going from your laptop, your computer, onto the iPad and then walking around in the job site. It makes it very user-friendly. There's a lot of control. There's a lot of tool sets and features, and I know they're continuing to roll out new features as well. So when it comes to really educating a lot of our team members, which I'll get into here in a minute, they're really making it somewhat easy, right? So a couple of our use cases I have listed here is model viewer, coordination, and issue tracking, right? And issue tracking is, I think, the really big one for Revizto here. So education internally, not just with BIM, but with Revizto as well. Once we decide that a project is going to be utilizing a model through some sort of coordination, whether that would be involving our trade partners, subcontractors, or are we doing that structured plan review, right? I sit down with them and I offer that education. I give them that training, kind of the one-on-one thing, but as a group. And I encourage them to start playing with it and start figuring out the tools themselves within Revizto, right? So we pass that around project to project. Other current use cases, right? So some of our SPR, structured plan reviews, we have the opportunity to receive 65%, 70%, 80% drawings and dig in to the model and start marking that up for our own estimators and then our design teams as well, and present them with any potential coordination issues that could be resolved prior to a construction set coming out. Now the fun of it all is externally, right? So I think a lot of people on this call, a lot of other BIM professionals, right? BIM coordinators, managers, whatever your title is, right? If you're in a model and you're coordinating, the struggle is educating other people around you. And the struggle here internally, although it's been tough, we are getting buy-in, but some of our trade partners have never really touched anything like this before. So we really have to take our time with that, right? So on our specific multifamily project right now, I treated it like the way I did internally, where I sit down with these trade partners and let them know well in advance through the execution planning process of this is the software we're going to be using and this is our process. We're using it now and you're going to continue to use it throughout construction. That's the goal. Can't force it right now since it's fairly new. We're still rolling it out and giving everybody a good idea of what is going on there. We want to ensure that our site teams are pulling up that model out in the field, right? We have plan tables at, I'm pretty sure, the majority of our job sites now. So they're able to pull up that model on the plan table, and this can be during a preparatory meeting. Are there rough-ins approaching within 3 weeks, right? We have to get into level 1, start popping hangers up, and get some sheet metal up. Well, with this model and through our coordination process, we've been able to pull that out on site and have drawings laid out on the table, but then have a model pulled up on the screen so we can really understand who's going to go in first. And that still gives us the opportunity to make any kind of last minute changes or adjustments. Because I think we all know that if something's coordinated, that's usually in quotes, it's never completely coordinated. We usually only hear when something goes wrong anyway. So, and of course, on-site interactions to promote model checks, right? It's just, hey, is someone walking around on site with an iPad? I put my effort in. I try and get out to as many of these job sites as I can, and I'll pull the model up. If I have the iPad handy, I'll walk out on site and just interact with maybe some of our trade partners, plumbing, sheet metal, and our own site teams, and ask them, what are you looking at? Let's look at it in the model and kind of start pushing that narrative as well. So opportunity-wise, like I said, internally, the benefits are starting to get realized. This is going to be a long process, right? Ralph spoke on ROI. There's really no true definition there for a BIM ROI, but in the multifamily world, we're starting to see it on some of our projects. Rough-ins are starting. People are seeing that these solutions were found prior to them walking into the building, right? And they have this model to walk into and use as an additional tool. Some of the other things that we've learned throughout this process is we need to start asking questions on who is going to be modeling, right? So some of our site teams and site managers and other employees, we're realizing that we can get models from someone like a wood frame truss supplier, right? Hambro, prefabricated structural metal wall panels and structural steel. It's not just the MEP fabrication models anymore. We can really get these detailed models because half the time these manufacturers are already going to produce models to begin with. So if we can pull them in if you can pull them in earlier, then the coordination is going to go a lot smoother. So pre-construction, we've already spoken on SPR a lot, and then of course VR, which is kind of a neat little tool to use as well. So in conclusion here, to really wrap things up, some of our lessons learned are we have to be focused on that contract language. That's kind of the struggle right now. We have to make everyone aware from the owner down of what our process is going to be and make it clear. So that rolls into having the conversation earlier with the owner, the architects, and the trade partners. So if there's any hiccups throughout this way, we can always refer back to that contract language. What are you actually requiring throughout this modeling process? And then, of course, gathering trade partner feedback. With all of us being in the BIM world, a lot of the feedback we get right now is it's useless. I've always done it this way, or it's not going to work. It's a constant pushback. I think it's always going to be like that. I don't know, but I got to be optimistic and look at the brighter side of things. It will get better. I think when people see the value, sometimes they don't admit it, that it actually works. They only tell us when things go wrong. It doesn't fit, right? Why didn't we catch that? Well, these are our lessons learned. And this is what we're learning in the multifamily world right now. It's a tricky spot to be in, but I think the path that we're on is going to set us up for success in the future for projects to come, and keep our owners and architects even more excited for the product that we can put out. So that's going to conclude our Harkins portion here for multifamily and utilizing Revizto out in the field.
Ralph and Patrick, that was awesome. Thanks very much for sharing your story. Let me share my screen again. So again, that was Ralph and Patrick from Harkins talking about how they tackled BIM and multifamily and overcoming the challenges of gaining adoption and buy-in from the project team. That's just great stuff. We really appreciate it, guys. Now we're going to move on to Brent Johnson from Hoar Construction. Brent's going to talk about how he's using hypermodeling to communicate with his project teams. So Brent, I'll pass it on to you.
All right, everyone. How's it going? My name's Brent Johnson. I am with Hoar Construction. Just to get into the agenda of what we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to do a brief introduction. I'm going to talk about what is hypermodeling, why you should care, our process, and then any questions you may have will follow after the presentation. So just a brief introduction. I'm Brent Johnson. I'm a VDC manager with Hoar Construction. I'm based out of Houston. So basically what I do is I take all the models from designers and trade partners and then load them in Navisworks and run clash detection. That's our main function. So a little bit about us. We were founded in 1940. We are a full-service general contractor operating in the United States. We work in healthcare, government, retail, mixed use, office, commercial, entertainment, education, residential, hospitality, and we even do a little bit of industrial and manufacturing. So we have a couple of offices, DC, Nashville, Birmingham, Florida, Houston, and Austin. We also have an Atlanta office that just kind of opened up and is getting started. So a few of the people we work with, Disney, probably a main client of ours there in Florida, and just various companies. So what is hypermodeling? It's not an overcaffeinated modeler. There are many definitions. Our definition is marrying the 2D documents with the 3D documentation. 2D documentation is positioned correctly within the federated model. An example, 2D PT shop drawings overlaid on the federated model. If you can see here, this is just kind of one of the overlay features that Revizto offers. So why should you care? At least for us, we don't always get 3D models. I know for us right now, I'm working on a project that is the structure is just 2D CAD drawings. We also normally don't have a budget to convert from 2D to 3D. For example, your PT shop drawings, we commonly only get, CAD files at best. If we even get those CAD files, most of the time we'll get a PDF shop drawing. 2D documents are still our deliverable. So these are the things that we're turning over to the owner that's really necessary for us to complete a job. So an example, this is just a PT shop drawing, and my boss, Pat Davis, tells me there's a world where trades will actually send you 3D PT cables files. I've been in this industry a little longer since yesterday, about 5 years, and I've never seen that. I do not believe that actually happens. But that being said, we have found a way to utilize the information that we were given most effectively. This is a typical PT drawing we get on our jobs. Things we check are distances from columns, anchor points, etc. The easy way for us to do our check is to push the 2D sheets to Revizto and set up 3D overlays. By using Revizto, we can cut down our review time significantly. So, for instance, right here, this is showing some anchor points for PT cables, and we have sleeves. Well, on our drawings, sleeves can't be within 18 inches of a tendon dead zone, or so a little more on why you should care. Hypermodeling allows us to use a 3D light table approach. So what does that mean? We utilize something called the 3D light table approach. This is where we take the 2D documents and overlay them on the 3D model in Revizto. This allows us to harness those contract documents with the model and ultimately produce a more effective coordination process in the past. This also allows us to find discrepancies in our shop drawings. I know most people are probably doing something similar, but with Revizto, we are able to cut down something like our coordination meetings from 2 hours plus to around 15 minutes of trade. These are phone calls that we have, and then if we need to, we'll schedule another call for more specific items. So another example is, and this is a really good one. So this is one of our emergency room projects that we were working on in Alabama. And in this picture, you will see Unistrut. So what you're seeing here is actually the structural members to mount exam room lighting. So I got a call from the superintendent, and everybody dreads this call. You dang BIM guys screwed up our job. Well, I asked him what he was talking about, told him to send me some pictures, which we saw in the last slide. By using Revizto, I then grabbed their shop drawing, which you can see here on the top right, overlaid it in Revizto, and this is what it produced, our model. So you can see here, in about 15 minutes, I was able to tell the superintendent, talk him off a ledge, and say, this is not our fault. These are the shop drawings. These are our model. Nothing matches. But we were also able to talk him through the fix and how to route the piping around what was installed. So our process is we use Procore as our project management software. So that houses all of our models. Our trade partners will load their models into Procore, and then we take the designer models and our trade partner models from Procore, push them into Navisworks, and then we run our clash detection and issue documentation. All of that gets uploaded into Revizto, which is our hypermodeling platform, that we then start tracking all of our class issues with the sign dates and their chat board. We also use this as a VR platform for projects that we're using VR on. So just to go a little farther, incorporated design into a federated model. We make our markups in Navisworks, and this is probably the same workflow most people are using. And then we export. And so this is that chat feature I was discussing just a minute ago. So we give everyone the software. We also give training to our software, training to everyone on the software. Daniel Buckner is probably 99% of the reason why our job sites and the people receiving the trainings have a good understanding and what can be done and how to do it. So the overall benefit of using Revizto, aside from being able to check things like we are with overhead shop drawings, with sleeve shop drawings, being able to confirm PTs, you're saving time, you're saving money, and it's producing less rework or remodeling. The data is all accessible to the field. On our projects, I think everyone in the field has an iPad. So at all times, they can be in Revizto on their iPad walking the field, and if there's an issue with coordination, it's all there. So we're loading our shop drawings in there, and we're checking those shop drawings against our model before those shop drawings make it to the field. This is improving our process overall, because it's ensuring that the shop drawings they're using in the field are what we modeled. It's also giving us those superintendents who really built things off light tables, the ability to use the program because they can see the 2D, because they can see the 3D, and it's all housed in one place. So that's it for me.
Brent, thank you so much. Great to get your insights, and we appreciate you kind of taking back the curtain, sharing your workflows, including the use of hypermodeling, and really the impact of improved communication on your coordination meeting times and how it's helping you become more engaged with your field team. That's really great stuff. So let me pass it on to Dan Buckner. Dan's going to be sharing some ways in which you can improve providing your building information model to your project teams.
Excellent. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, the guys from Harkins and Brent as well. I appreciate the call out, and I'm only slightly embarrassed, but I'll hop in right here. As Pat had said, my name is Daniel Buckner. I'm the Southeast Territory Manager for Revizto, based out of Atlanta, and excited for you to jump in with us this morning. What I want to do, since today's overall topic is Rev Up BIM for non-BIM users, I want to highlight a few tips and tricks that I like to recommend when it comes to bringing in new users into Revizto. So overall, it's not enough that a platform is easy to use. The workflows within those platforms need to be simple, direct, and clear. And that's what you really need to convey when you're trying to get towards a true integrated collaboration platform. It really offers access to anybody. So all too often, as a few of our earlier presenters noted, that BIM excludes project team members so often, and it's mostly because it's based off of complex design tools. And really, as an industry, we're doing ourselves a huge disservice by boxing out people who are not proficient in these authoring tools, in these BIM tools. Field expertise, fabrication superintendents, FM professionals, all of these people, they have a really valuable input, and just because they don't quote unquote speak 3D doesn't mean they're not vital to the process. So whenever I'm engaging in a training or I'm recommending how to introduce new users to my customers, I want to emphasize that you know your audience when preparing that Revizto model. What is important for those users to actually see, and how can you provide them with the tools that they need without them getting lost in the toolbox itself? So first off, I recommend simplifying what those users are actually going to see. So this is a quick little trick that I've picked up from our AECOM users down in Australia and New Zealand, and I definitely want to give credit to them. But what I've done is I've created a very basic coordination view that highlights the important building systems that are relevant to the trade partners. Now, excuse the magenta and excuse the bright colors. We're really just trying to convey a very simple version of what the idea we're trying to convey here. We need to frame things the way they need to be seen by the users. So if you have a mechanical trade, make sure that they have a view set up that is easy for them to engage in the process and for them to do their model review. Since this is already set up, they can go right to where they need to, and they can drop and start to create their issues. Just like that, they're participating in the coordination process, and you pave the road for them to get in there and do their jobs quickly and easily. And that's what we're really trying to emphasize, getting everybody into the environment and participating. Now, if your users are a little bit more familiar with the 2D workflow, if they are usually working with 2D paper or digital drawings, that's absolutely fine. We don't want to force users into the model if they don't have to, or if they're just plain not ready to engage with the 3D objects yet. So let's work with what they're familiar with. So again, I recommend changing their default screen from 3D to 2D. That way, you're sending people to the direct environment that suits the skill and the actual job function that they're trying to perform. So we're not just appealing to 2D or, new users who are not used to the 3D workflow. We're actually putting you into this 2D environment for QA/QC or overall details, fabricators. We're getting you into that environment where the 2D is more beneficial to the workflow. So why don't we get them to where they need to be so they can do their job? And then once we start to get users familiar in that environment, we're going to start to sprinkle in some of the 3D features. So again, we want to know your audience. If, for example, you know your field superintendent is going to be working on the 3rd floor for the next couple of weeks, create a 3rd floor view to them that actually has that value. We've already taken in and performed this overlay. And Brent had a good example of demonstrating the overlay with the field superintendent to actually show them where the problem went wrong in construction. But you can't always expect that end user to automatically know how to use that overlay. So why don't we go ahead and set it up for them? Because first of all, it proves the value of combining the two environments. And second, let's be frank, there is a wow factor for people coming from a 2D environment into 3D. To be able to combine these two together really pops and shows them that yes, I want to use this. Same thing with detail views. Let's go ahead and create these views for new users, because once they understand the value of them, they're going to go and seek them out themselves. And that's what we want to do when we're educating people on a platform. We want to make it easy for them, and we want them to understand the tools there, but we also want to show them when to use those tools. So by crafting these setups and by crafting these views at the startup, you're guiding people into how best to use the product, and they will get more proficient at it. And as they proceed, they're going to go ahead and start doing these things on their own. So it's a really good way to get that in there. So not only are we showing somebody how to do something, we're showing them why they need to do it. So real simple, real easy. And now finally, it's time to simplify how these users actually contribute to the issue tracking portion of Revizto. So while we're in this view, this is a very powerful view, and it's very powerful and accessible. But if people aren't actually documenting the problems that they find, we're failing at the overall collaboration process. So it's our goal here to make sure they document that problem first. You know, if a reporter adds detail and they're an overachiever, they're putting things like due date, priorities, that's absolutely great. But let's be honest, that is not how the real world operates. So we want to utilize stamps so we can automate that process as much as possible. So you can see here, I've created some very, very basic level stamps. If users want to use something a little bit more specific and varied, that's fantastic. As you go along, as people get in here, you can add more by request. But when we're getting started, we're going to be limiting the options for the new users, and that reduces confusion because it outlines the workflows that they actually need to do. We've set up this viewpoint for them. They can go right to the viewpoint and start evaluating, and now they can simply drop a tag into the process, and that has been entered into the Revizto ecosystem, and they are automatically populating. They do not have to worry about finding the correct assignee, assigning watchers, or adding things like tags. All of that is automated, and it goes right into the bucket that it's supposed to, and that individual user can go ahead and move on. We've taken the burden off the reporter, and they're ready to move on to the next problem, and in that case, we can for sure have a view set up for them. The important thing is that this issue is now in the Revizto system, and it's instantly reflected across the entire project. It's viewable to all project team members who need to see it, and it's going to be included automatically in our live dashboards and all reports. So everything, all the data you're pulling out of the Revizto model is current, and it's instant to the literal second somebody clicks that button. They are participating in the process. So overall, your models, your views, and stamps that we've looked at, they are going to look completely different in your project itself, but the overall lesson here is the same. It's to know your audience, know your users, optimize that experience within Revizto so we can help drive adoption. So because they will be focused on the tools that actually matter to them instead of being distracted by all the things that do not matter. So at the end of the day, we want these team members to find problems that you as the BIM manager or VDC manager cannot. You do not have the expertise or the background to identify these things that they can. We need to make it easy for them to contribute to that BIM VDC process. And when we do make it easy, you're going to have a true integrated collaboration workflow, and all of these are centered around that concept. So I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.